Welcome back to Investing with Ken. I'm Ken, and in this segment, we're going to talk about the importance of savings and how much you should be saving um, as you think about, you know, future, not just retirement goals, but future goals in general. So I'm going to sort of talk about the topic of saving. It's actually really interesting, as we live in a very consumerist society where basically the messages that you get all the time, if you watch programs, you watch, and actually obviously on social media, there's a number of these social media celebrities. Like for guys, there's a guy named Dan Bilzerian who is always, in yachts or mansions with beautiful girls all around him. Um, and so the messages, the subliminal or subtle subconscious messages, maybe conscious messages that are sent with all of these advertising and consumerism that we are surrounded by, is that the key to happiness is to constantly be spending money and striving for this next material um, possession. And the reality for, I think, many people is that, whatever toys or possessions or experiences that you're able to buy give you some short-term boost, and then you come back right to your baseline. And meanwhile, as we're living through COVID, obviously, it's a great illustration that you should have cushions to fall back on in case unexpected things happen with, your career or your business or life happens. I mean, it's very unfortunate. Like, a lot of people find themselves, with medical situations or other situations, and it really sets them back financially. So contrast that with, um, my background as an immigrant. When we came to this country in 1974, my parents my parents, my sister, lived in a one bedroom. You could call, basically you can say it's a tenement building in Jersey City, where I grew up through high school. And in Jersey City, that is not the one bedroom tenement, but I was there for the first few years that we were in this country, from 1974 to 1979. So from age 5 to around age 10, and I slept on a pull-out couch with my sister in the first few apartments, because there were only one bedrooms. But even at that time, it's a cultural thing. I'm from a part of India called Gujarat, but India in general, because of it wasn't that wealthy, particularly when my parents were growing up. And so there was a very strong culture of savings. You'd have in India people that had unimaginably lower incomes would still manage to save 20-30% of their income. And that might seem shocking to folks watching this here. So how do you do that? And there's a few different answers to that question. And I think one of the things is discipline and self control. And that's not really a shortcut, but actually, if you have the right mindset is so important. It's really not that difficult. Uh, I mean, growing up, I'll just give you like a for instance. I mean, right now, I would say that we eat out, reasonably frequently, multiple times a week. Not daily, but once or twice a week, probably. Um, Growing up, we never ate out. I mean, our splurge was going to Pizza Hut, once every 6 months. And so I'm not saying that because I'm an advocate of people shouldn't go out and eat. Uh, Actually, with COVID going on right now, we should actually order in or go out or whatever if we can, depending on where you are. But the point being that a lot of things that folks do without even thinking about it end up, cutting really into their ability to save. And so the first idea that I want to kind of introduce here is that we all have the ability to save much more. And I think what we're seeing with COVID, because of things are shut down, is actually, I bet you the savings rate has actually gone way up. But before COVID and in general, the savings rate in the United States is way, way lower than countries that have a lot less income and a lot less wealth. And so why is that important? It's important because without saving, we've got two different things. Obviously, the channel is about investing. If you don't save, you won't have anything to invest. So that's point number one. The foundation of investing is that you need to have money to invest. And that requires some savings, because you could take whatever your income is, no matter how high your income is, you could spend it all. And there are people who make millions and they spend even more than they make. Or you could be making, $40,000 a year, obviously doing without a lot of stuff, or $35,000 a year, and making it a point to save. So that's one overarching point. Savings is kind of a foundation. It allows you to have chips in the game, whether you then take those chips and you use it as a cushion to fall back on in case of emergencies so that you're not panicking, or you use some of that cushion to then make smart investment moves, where now, instead of just working and selling your time to an employer, you have your investment capital is also working for you. And there's a great saying, I think it's from Warren Buffett. We have a couple of passive income articles that on the website in the insight section. So by the way, please, if you like this video and you want to check out other great content, hit like and hit subscribe. So subscribe to our Investing with Ken channel on YouTube. So saving is really the foundation. I mean, as an investment advisor, for example, if you don't save anything, then I can't really help you. If you do your job of saving and then, you want to outsource and get good advice on how to make that money grow and work for you, then that's really, you got to have that foundation. That's a piece that I can't supply, your ability to save. I can coach you. I could try to help you understand how much you should be saving, et cetera, which we're going to cover later in this video. But going back to Buffett, he has this great saying that if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, then you'll have to work until you die. And I think that really kind of sums it up. There's a lot of great opportunities in the investment world, in the financial world, and you see people with not massive incomes slowly, through compounding and the power of good investment and financial decisions over a long period of time, actually accumulate pretty surprisingly large sums of money. And that gives them a cushion to fall back on. That gives them the income to retire on. So if that makes sense to you, then obviously one of the questions that comes up is, well, how much should I be saving? And look, there's no like one size fits all answer on this particular point. As we're seeing right now with COVID going on, because there just aren't the options to go out and travel and spend money like there were, other than maybe Amazon and the e-commerce people are benefiting. So maybe you sit at home and you order Amazon stuff, but or Walmart or whatever e-commerce, so what you're seeing is just automatically savings rates have gone up way, way above where they are normally. So this is sort of an external forced factor. And so people are boosting their savings, plus which also obviously many people with layoffs and unemployment and things like that they've also cut back partly prudently. But the reality is you shouldn't have to wait for a crisis like COVID or whatever else to then wake up and start saving. It would be great to be proactive and do it anyway. So one of the great concepts that I ran into, I forget who it's from, is this idea of paying yourself first. So don't think of saving as taking away from what you want to, what you can spend or being happy, but rather think of it as like paying your future self the amount that you save. So you sort of take that out first, and then whatever's left over, you manage to live on. And I think that actually, as a simple tool, works surprisingly well. So, even when I was starting out sort of relatively early in my career, and given that background that I had from being an immigrant and seeing how the culture was in places like India, I would say that it's really good if you can do it, to strive to save, I mean, if you're starting out, at least 5 to 10% and of your, at least your take home, so 5 to 10% of your take home pay, if you can save it. Now, there's a lot of other nuances that I'm not going to get into, such as, well, what about your 401k plan at work, et cetera. But at a minimum, right, everyone watching this video, you should have an emergency fund. So this is a bank account, maybe it should be a savings account so that you're not dipping into it. I mean, I've heard different ideas, even on the business side, where maybe you keep this account if you're the type of person that you tend to spend money if you have it. Maybe you set up this savings account at even a different bank, maybe a bank that's far away from where you live, without an online account where you'd actually physically have to go there. But whatever does the trick for you, the idea is that you should take some of this money that you're saving and put it in an emergency fund, which is there in case something happens and you need that money. So, I mean, really, if you follow some basic guidelines for saving and keeping that money aside, very quickly very early in your career, you should be able to get to a point where you do not worry about, oh, I might lose my job for a few months or 6 months or whatever. And obviously, once you get to that point, it's a really secure feeling, because now you don't worry about what'll happen to me. Am I going to be okay? And this is something in everybody's power. Everybody has the ability to save, a modest percentage of their take-home pay, maybe 5 or 10%. Of course, there's a lot of nuances to this, as I mentioned before. So, for example, if you have a lot of credit card debt, you want to pay some of that debt down if it's high cost debt. Now, what's high cost debt? I would say that if you have debt which is costing you more than 8% interest, 7% interest per year or more, and so by definition, almost all credit card debt would be in this category, you should be then balancing between, and assuming that you don't have a lot of emergency savings, come up with a plan to pay down the credit card debt as quickly as you can, while at the same time also building some emergency cushion. So how much is enough to save? If you're going to pay yourself first, as we talked about, I would say try to start obviously as high as you can without going crazy, but 10% is a good figure. If you can't do 10%, do 5%. If you can't even do 5%, maybe start with 1 or 2%, whatever you can do, and then look to increase that over time. Saving is a bit like a muscle. So once you get into the habit, you start thinking about it, you start focusing on, you will get better at it. And you can find things to cut that don't actually add to your happiness. While at the same time, I'm also a believer that you don't want to do savings and then take away the things that we also value in life, like great experiences. So, this is a bigger topic, but I would say that if you can aspire to save, or rather strive to save at least 5 to 10%, that's great. Once later on in your career or your business, when your income goes up, then that percentage can actually easily go up from even 10%. And think of that savings as paying yourself first. So your first goal when you're doing the savings is, one, is build up an emergency reserve of at least 3 months, but ideally 6 months of cash that you keep maybe in this separate account somewhere. After that, you want to pay down your debt and then build additional savings. And then after that, those additional savings, you can think about what other opportunities, whether they be privately through things like real estate or lending or areas that I've written about on my website and we'll cover in some of these videos, or in public investments like the stock market, the bond market, and so many other areas. Obviously, if you're extremely adventurous, things like cryptocurrency or smaller companies or, God forbid, options and things like that. So look, there's a lot of different things you can do once you make it a habit to start saving. And again, I would start at that sort of 5 to 10% level. Now, how do you do that? Maybe you don't have control of your budget or whatever. So there's different ideas on that. So the idea with pay yourself first, I think, is a good one, which is you set, say, 10%. As soon as you get your paycheck, you take that 10%, put it aside, maybe towards debt or towards your emergency fund, or maybe half. And then you don't go back. And then you just find a way to live on the other 90%. And that means in some cases, cutting back on discretionary purchases. If you're going to Starbucks every day, maybe you go every other day. If you're constantly ordering from Amazon, have a cooling off period where you're not allowed to order right away. You have to, save it in your Amazon list, and then you can only pick one item, once a week. Whatever that discipline is for you. There's obviously, you could get really, really creative, so that you are spending money on things that you will really value, and you're not wasting money on things that ultimately won't really add much to your happiness. And by the way, this is another, actually, that reminds me of another really important point, which is, what is saving? So effectively, whenever you earn money, this is and you pay your taxes, so you get after-tax money. It's really like your share of society's productivity. That's really what money is, right? So when you have money, you can trade that money for things, either experiences or stuff, and services or products. So the choice that you always have is, should I spend the money now and immediately get things, services or products? Or should I take some of that, which I could have spent now, and put it off, squirrel it away, save it, invest it, keep it for a rainy day? And that's a trade-off that is worth thinking about, because it's not like we should always put off everything and just save and have a mountain of money when we die, because that doesn't make any sense. Ultimately, it's about experiences and things that, that's really the whole purpose of it. But at the same time, how many people spend money without any thought, and later on in life, they don't have that much money, and they wish they had it back. So that's really the key, is to avoid making a mistake where you would regret it later on. That's really how to kind of cover that balance. On the one hand, none of us know how much time we have, and as I've said in the introductory video or in other videos, that time and health are two of the most important sources of wealth that really have not that much directly to do with money. But beyond those areas, we constantly have to think about and make the trade-off of, how much do we want to consume now, and how much do we want to defer into the future? And the beauty of the part that we defer into the future is, not only gives us future options and future peace of mind, but we can take that money, because we deferred our immediate gratification. And then if we're at all knowledgeable about investing, whether that's investing in ourselves, investing in our own business, or investing in the world outside of our immediate, direct activities, then that money can really compound. And then that money makes money for you, which ultimately gives you a lot more freedom and options. So if, for example, you deferred a lot of Starbucks lattes, every day, and you only had a latte once a week, that money, and then that money invested and compounded, could lead to a lot more things, a lot more options. Or if you're into toys, a lot more toys. Maybe there'll be different toys, instead of a lot of frivolous things bought online. Perhaps you'll be able to buy a house or something really meaningful to you, depending on who you are. So it's that constant trade-off between using and spending today versus having more freedom and more options down the road. I think, to me, that's really the heart of saving. And once you understand that those are the stakes, I think it actually becomes a lot easier to save. Now, in future videos, we're going to talk about, even further details and how-tos, and obviously one of the topics in savings is how much should you put into your 401k and how 401ks work and things like that. Because 401k plans are probably the number one most important savings vehicle for Americans. And actually, the average American balance in a 401k is actually quite low. So definitely, we need to do more on that front for everybody's, future retirement readiness. So, in a nutshell, how much should you be saving? As much as you can within reason. That also allows you to also be happy and live a life where you can afford experiences. As a rough rule of thumb, aspire to maybe 10%. If you can't do 10%, at least do 5 or do a few percent to start. And then as your income goes up, and maybe you're in a family with a joint income, maybe you get a bonus at the end of the year. So there's a lot of different circumstances. Take a percentage of those extra amounts, that second income or whatever, and maybe go higher than the 10%. Maybe you can get to 20%, 25%. The more you accelerate the savings, and then the better you are at where to invest that for growth, the greater the amount of freedom that you'll get in your life and the options that will multiply, including your ability to generate passive income. So if you liked this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Investing with Ken. Please like this video, share it with friends if you know anybody that would appreciate seeing this content about how much to save, and look for future editions. Thanks. Bye.